In this video, I'm going to show you how I make a character in 3D from start to finish, from sculpting the character to UVs to texturing and even rigging an advanced skeleton. This character is available for free on Gumroad, so if you like her, please download her and use her for your animations. I only ask that you like and subscribe as a form of appreciation. So thank you guys. She's a little kid character. She's highly stylized, cartoon-like, and there are so many ways to make a character. So if you do things a little differently, that's totally cool. I just want to share my process because maybe there's something you can draw from, or it's just kind of fun to see what other people do. So right now I'm using AI to search for different images for reference. I don't use any specific one image as my reference. I kind of just draw elements from each one and I download a few and just go from there. If you're not a 2D artist, this can be really helpful to save time. I've got one as my reference here, and I'm going to use Nomad Sculpt as my first app. I love Nomad because it is great for on the go. You can sculpt on the train when you're commuting or on a plane or when you're watching TV at home. And for the most part, it can be a really powerful app that can do everything you need it to do. It depends on what your needs are, really. But if you're like me and you're making low poly characters, you don't need everything that ZBrush has to offer. You just need a few of the basic tools, and Nomad has got what you need. So right now, I'm just placing basic shapes. I've got spheres and cylinders, and I've got this big ball of hands because I don't like to sculpt hands, and I already have a bunch made, so I keep them all together in a ball, and I grab the ones I need for when I need them. So I've put them into place, and I'm just adjusting her general shape and getting everything together. I'm not going to sculpt her feet either because she'll have shoes on, and I'm going to model those shoes, so I don't need to waste time on sculpting anything that you won't see. I also won't be sculpting her clothing because I'm going to model her clothing from her body shape. So that will save time here too. I just need a general body shape and face for the character. And then I'll be retopologizing. And I retopologize also on an app called Cozy Blanket that I use on the iPad. So here I'm just building up her cheeks. There's a few brushes I really love. I love the clay buildup brush. I love the smooth brush and the move tool. As you can see right now, I'm using that move tool. There's a symmetry option, which is super important when you're building a symmetrical character. Pretty much impossible to build one without it. And I'm putting together her hair. I don't go with this pigtail later on. You'll see what I do, but for now, it's good to have something in place. As far as detail goes, I don't put too much detail into this character because she's going to be low poly, and when I remesh her, I don't want that mesh to be too dense, so there's no point in adding too many details if I'm just going to remesh her without those details. And here I'm fixing up her nose. Got to get those nostrils. I'm not going to sculpt in a mouth bag. Mouth bags are really easy to model in, and it would be a pain in the butt to sculpt a big mouth bag in there. No way. Cool. All right, so I'm bringing the character into Cozy Blanket. This is the app I use for Retopology. I like to retopologize my characters by hand because character deformation is so important for animation. So I think it's better to use manual retopology rather than a retopology tool for things that you will be animating. And it just takes practice. You just have to give yourself some grace and take time to see what you need to do. One thing that's really important with manual retopology is defining edge loops. So I'm creating edge loops around her nose, her eyes, her mouth, her ears, things that will move. But eyes and mouth are specifically very important. Also, you want to create edge loops around her elbows, shoulders, knees, ankles, fingers, everything like that. And I start out really low poly. So I want as few polygons as possible making those loops, because as I go and as I connect things, I'm adding more and more polys, and I'll need to add more and more edge loops, and that will just make things higher mesh poly count. So it's better to start small and work your way up rather than starting with lots of unnecessary polygons. Just filling things in. I get to skip that foot, like I said, so that saves a lot of time. And this is a great tool. It's like kind of puzzle solving or problem solving. It's kind of mindless once you do it a lot, and you can listen to a podcast or have a show on in the background when you're retopologizing. It can be kind of a Zen-like process. So the face is very important, and she's got a big head, so that takes a while. And although characters are all different, the general shapes are the same, and what you want to do is generally the same. So after you've done a few characters, you get in the groove and you know what you're doing. I'm smoothing it out, but I don't want to over smooth it. I want to make sure that the areas of deformation have closer loops, but you still do want to smooth because you don't want your mesh to be all lumpy and bumpy later. And Cozy Blanket is great because you actually draw on all of the quads, and it just feels very natural and intuitive. All right, on that final stretch here. I don't want any quads to, I want all quads, and I only want a few of them or some of them to meet in a 5-point connection. I don't want tons of those 5-point connections. You're going to have them like on the forehead and lots of areas where edge loops meet. But for the most part, I want 4-point connections. And like I said, all quads. And here I'm just cleaning up some of the mesh. I don't think things were connecting properly, so I'm going back around. And finishing her up. And I decided not to retopologize her hands because I already have pre-made hands that I'm going to bring into Maya and connect later. So, like I said, I do not want to waste my time doing something I've done a million times before. I can just use assets I already have pre-made. It makes sense. Okay, so now we're in Maya. I'm making her shoe. You'll notice she's wearing a sweater. I was fooling around with Marvelous Designer and I made something, but I'm not going to end up using it, so I didn't include that part. But I decided to model her shoe. I find shoes to be easiest box modeled because they're a box shape, so it's easier than sculpting. I have a tutorial on how to model a boot, so if you don't have any experience modeling shoes, that's a good one to watch. I work in smooth preview a lot in Maya. I go back and forth between smooth and unsmoothed. And I build the shoe out in parts. So right now I'm doing like the fabric part of the shoe. I'll also do the tongue, the laces, and then the rubber sole as well. And I like to do it in different pieces because it's much easier to UV and texture in pieces rather than as one big block of jumbled mess. So, and then you can combine that mesh later and it still deforms fine and it looks good. So here I am making the rubber bottom of her shoe, just sizing it up. You only need to make one shoe because when you're all finished with it and you've UV'd it and everything, you can mirror it over to the other side so that you'll have two identical but opposite shoes. That's a great way to work when you have a symmetrical character. It's like the only way to work, really. And I have a video for doing that as well. So definitely check that out if you've never done it. Here I'm jumping around. Sometimes I get kind of bored with what I'm doing and I want to try something else in the moment. So I think I wanted to see her eyeball in her eye. And I already had a pre-made eye. I just had to recolor it. And I do that in Photoshop. And I export it out and bring it in. And I like the way it looks in the render view. So it was worth a shot. Just a side note, I also when I brought her into Maya, I made sure that my character was the same scale as a real live character a person in the world. So I made her the same height as like an average 5-year-old. I think I had to look it up and whatever that was in centimeters. I made a little measuring stick that's on her left on the right in the viewport. That's what that long line is. That's a measuring stick. And I scaled her up to the size of that stick. It's good to work in like a real world scale, even though she's not shaped like a real human. It's good to work in the size that she would be if she were a real person, because if you ever use effects, those effects will be affected by scale. So you want to make sure everything is in real world scale. Now I'm just doing UVs for the shoe. I like to do UVs as I go because I don't necessarily like doing them that much. So I like to get them over with, and I like to texture as I go as well. So it's good to have them done so I can texture as soon as possible. I should have UV'd just one shoelace and then duplicated it, but I forgot to do that. So then I just ended up doing all the UVs separately. Okay. Okay, so I bring in her hand now. It's a hand I had already made and retopologized, but I realized that it was too high mesh for this character. So I decide to use the quad draw tool and just use that hand as a base mesh and quad draw over it to make it the right poly count so that it could connect to her body mesh. So here's the quad draw tool. It's a great retopology tool in Maya. If you'd like a video on this, please let me know in the comments. This is the tool I used before I started using Cozy Blanket, and it's great. And I still do use it in Maya from time to time to fix things up when I'm in a pinch. So here it is. You get those like blue polys when you're using it so that you know you're using it. And hands are important. The edge loops that you choose are really important because the deformation of the hand is very specific. So you have to make sure you have edge loops around your knuckles and all of your fingers in the right area, and your thumb, obviously. So once I have that done, I connect the mesh, combine the mesh, and I weld all of the vertices together to attach the hand to the body. And then I'm moving things around, making sure it looks good. And in order to finish up this hand, I use the Sculpt tool in Maya just to give it the right shape. So I like the Sculpt tool in Maya, not to like sculpt out characters the way I did in Nomad, but to adjust the polys and adjust the geometry after the fact, after I have it there. So I don't really change anything, but I do smooth things out a little bit, move them around. I just inflate her fingers a touch. It's all very subtle. So I use that. I don't know why it turns the mesh green sometimes, but it does. If anyone knows why, please let me know in the comments. And I also use the soft select tool quite a bit when I'm moving vertices because I don't want any weird deformations in the mesh, and soft select kind of prevents that from happening. All right. Here, I delete half the character and then mirror her over because I want to ensure that she's symmetrical. And your character doesn't have to be symmetrical, but it's really helpful when you rig an advanced skeleton to have a symmetrical character. So I'm just making sure that she is here. Now I'm using this second reference image more, and I've I've duplicated her body mesh, and I'm going to use the duplicated mesh to build a sweatshirt. So I'm using that as my base for a sweatshirt. And I'm just inflating different parts of it. I built a hood, and I'm modeling her zipper and her drawstrings for her hood. Yeah, I strongly recommend, if you're not building a detailed outfit, to just use the mesh you already have. It makes sense. It already fits her because it is her. And it's a really easy way to work. I'm going to do the same thing with her shorts. I'm going to duplicate out her bottom half and build her shorts from that. Here I'm just extruding along a curve to build her drawstring. And I'm going to texture that little end clasp with a metal texture within Arnold. Okay, moving her legs around. Remember, she has no feet technically. Her shoes are her feet. And anything under her, there's nothing under her clothes. Her clothes are her body. So here I'm UVing her head. This is a really important UV because you don't want to show any seams on her face because face is important. It's the moneymaker. So I'm making her seam under her hairline. And generally with characters, the face UV looks the same. It's like a mask with the round, a heart mask kind of. I don't know how to describe it, but I decided to make different hair for her here. I went back to Nomad and I'm extruding along a curve, getting this like cool S-shape pigtail. I think this is a much better one than I had before, and it's going to be way more easy to retopologize. Okay, so here I'm bringing the hair texture into, or the 3D hair object into Procreate, and I'm going to texture in Procreate. I've never really textured in Procreate before, but I did with this character and I really like the results. So I used the hairbrush to create highlights and lowlights in her hair here. And it's a lot of fun. You can only export a diffuse map, a diffuse map, a roughness map, and a metallic map. So if you want a normal map, you're gonna have to make it yourself. But for this character, I kept it simple and I just need the roughness and the diffuse. So here I'm painting her face. I made a color palette from that reference image in Procreate, which was great because I could pull exactly the colors I wanted. And I'm just like giving her nose some pink, eyes some pink. Here I'm painting on the fingernails. And then I'm back into Maya and just placing those pigtails into position. I retopologize the pigtails as well. And then I'm also working in Photoshop to create the textures for all of her clothing. So I got some free textures from just the internet for the fabric of her sweatshirt and her shoes. And I'm just changing the colors up in Photoshop. You can tell I render a lot because I like to see how my colors look as I go. So here I'm doing the shoe texture. I go back to Photoshop to get the right orange that I want for the shoe. I think I changed this color quite a bit. I'm using the reference image specifically for the color here, and I just saturate the orange a little more. Here I apply the texture. Once I light the character right and render it out, I see if I like it. And I do. So I just need to add her hand textures. And I don't paint the eyebrows. I just give it a base AI standard shader and a color to match her hair, kind of. And that should be good enough. And after just adjusting her headband a little so that it tucks into behind her ears, I think she's ready for rigging. So, oh, one final thing before rigging, I have a pre-made teeth and tongue set that I use for most characters, unless they have very unique teeth. And I just pulled them in here, and I'm just resizing them for her mouth. And I get them into the right spot. And yeah, so now she is ready to be rigged. Highly recommend pre-making your teeth and tongue if you use them a lot. Now I rig in Advanced Skeleton. Advanced Skeleton is a great built-in plugin for Maya. Here I've imported the biped skeleton, and then you just start placing all of the joints into the right locations. So I don't work too hard with the face stuff because I'm going to rig her face later, and that rig will replace everything going on here. So I don't spend too much time on that. The thing I do spend a lot of time in here is her hands. You have to get all those finger joints into place, and that takes a little while. So that's not so much fun. But since this character is symmetrical, I only have to do it to one hand, because when you build out the skeleton, it will mirror on both sides. So I'm moving everything out. One thing that's really important with Advanced Skeleton is making sure you save multiple scenes. So I save a body pre-build scene, and then before I build the body, I save as a post-build scene and then build on that. And that way, if I ever need to go back to my pre-build, if there's any issues or I didn't put a joint in the right spot or whatever, I can redo it again. But you always want that non-destructive method. And then I do a pre-face build scene and then a post-face build scene. And the pre-face build scene is the most important. You definitely want a pre-face build scene saved, because the face build is very finicky, and it's easy to run into an error and then have to go back and rebuild your whole face, and it's just so time consuming. You're not going to want to do that. Okay, so I'm testing my skeleton and also binding the skin to this skeleton. So after you build the skeleton, you need to bind the skin, as you would with any rig, to the skeleton. And also, I like to harden the skeleton weights and use Delta Mush on the skeleton, because that will make the deformities much more natural. So here I go, binding the skin. And it's not weighted completely correctly. It's like pulling the hair down. I can fix that later. And I have a video on how to do that as well. So That's no problem at all. And here I am building the face. That's a lot of grabbing faces and edges and vertices and just selecting certain ones so that the scripts know where to pull from. So this is why I made such a big deal about making a lot of edge loops around the eyes. You need, and the mouth, you need a lot to choose from. You need to select vertices and the eyebrows and the nose and the chin. I run into an issue with the jaw for this character where it was pulling my jaw down all the way for some reason. And I found the way to fix that was just to delete the jawbone from the body build. So that was a little frustrating, but we got past it. Okay, so here I go, building the face. This is where you hold your breath and cross your fingers. And when it succeeds, you sigh in relief because then you get to play with your character. So here she is moving. It's so exciting. It's so much fun. On her face controllers to the right of her face right now, you'll see there's a little happy face at the bottom. That, if you select that, will give you all these different options for different faces that she can make. So you can make the character have a happy face or a sad face or a mad face or whatever. And it's really fun to play with. Here, I'm just reweighting parts of the character. So the weighting isn't perfect with Advanced Skeleton, so if you pose the character around a little bit, you'll see how the deformations are, and you can fix things. I fixed her hair. Her hair is not rigged. So if you download this character, just know that you'll have to rig her hair yourself, unfortunately, or maybe someday I'll get some time and rig her hair. But until then, sorry about that. Here I am just reweighting parts of her sweatshirt. Also, if you download this character, you'll probably have to do some weighting yourself on the character because depending on what the animation is, she may need some adjustments. I find that's true with like all my characters. So the more time you spend with a character and the more animating you do of a character, the better your weighting will get because you'll constantly be fixing things. And I'm just checking on her sweatshirt and stuff, checking how all her joints move, and her blink, making sure her blink is good and her eyes close right. One thing you'll notice here is that you can't even see all the controllers because her body shape is so unique. It hides some of the controllers under the mesh. So I am just adjusting the size of all the controllers now so that they're the right size for this character. And if you want to learn how to do that, I have a video on that as well. So please check that out too. Here, her fingers. You can't see any of her finger controllers. So I had to hide her mesh and really dig in there to get each one of those and make them big enough to see. But this is a great thing about Advanced Skeleton. You can change things around and make anything work for you, really. Here we are, getting those fingers. If you select that big U-shaped controller, you can go into the outliner, or not the outliner, sorry, the channel box, and cup her fingers and control them from there, from the channel box. So there's different ways to do things. This is an FKIK skeleton. You can switch back and forth, which is so cool. Just fixing a little bit more of the weighting and posing her out. I tested out her tongue to make sure that it moved, because if you want her to speak, you need a tongue that moves. Testing out expressions. Yeah, so I'm posing her. Definitely pose your characters. If you guys download this character, please let me know what you think. I hope that you like her and you have a lot of fun. I would definitely recommend using her to practice with your rigging or your texturing, so you can try to rig her yourself in Advanced Skeleton, or delete the UVs that I made and then UV her yourself, texture her yourself. It's always good to practice, make your own animations, and I'd love to see how they come out. Yeah, so I had a lot of fun on this character, and I really enjoyed talking about her, and I hope that this video was informative. And if you liked it, let me know, and let me know if you want me to make more videos like this, if you want to see other characters, if you want more free characters. Just please let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.